welcome Kyle Daigle.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? A lot of energy for 9 a.m. over here after last night. Welcome to day 2. I'm Kyle Daigle, the Chief Operating Officer here at GitHub. So I joined GitHub as a developer myself over 11 years ago. And until this morning, they still haven't kicked me out yet. But this also means that I've been here for all 10 years of GitHub Universe. I've seen the groundbreaking ships, all the groundbreaking product announcements, and to a fair number of moments that have, up until now, stayed behind the scenes. Like every good software project, things break, they work, and they come together at the last minute. And our early GitHub Universe events were no exception. At our first Universe in 2013, we did not have a big product announcement, but we were scrappy. So we started our big push on security by announcing our YubiKey partnership for 2FA. Now, 6 years later, we announced the first version of GitHub Actions. A small team of incredibly talented hubbers came together to show off a demo of an infinitely customizable dev automation tool. But what most people don't know is that that first version was built in about 60 days. What we initially built didn't do exactly what we wanted. So we pivoted quickly, and we shipped to learn. And I'm still a little bit salty that we left behind HCL for YAML, but I'll get over that eventually. When we all look back on our software careers and think about those memorable moments, sometimes they're amazing ships. A lot of times they're near misses, and I'm not sure that you're a developer until you've dropped a database or caused an outage. It's a rite of passage for all of us. But in those moments, from the last 10 years of Universe to over 16 years of GitHub, our community of developers has kept us going. Whether that's a colleague at work who takes the time to onboard you onto a new tech stack, or a person who takes the extra time to do that pull request review that got you to a better solution. It's the tribe of developers that have helped all of us continue moving forward. New laptops, new programming languages, new frameworks, monoliths and microservices and monoliths again, all in service of bringing our ideas to the world and ultimately driving human progress. Across it all, we're teams of developers who decided to work together to do the unthinkable across vast distances. Together, we captured the first pictures of a black hole, thanks to Dr. Katie Bauman and team. And of course, with Python libraries like NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, and more. Thanks to our friends at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab and over 12,000 open source contributors, we put a helicopter on Mars that did over 70 flights. And we came together to preserve the world's open source for future generations in GitHub's Arctic Code Vault, putting 21 terabytes of code onto optical film to safeguard our work for over 1,000 years. All of this was achieved with over 100 million wildly talented developers around the world. And what I think is even more exciting than all of this is just the beginning. As we look to the future, we've set our sights on something even bigger, an aspiration to create a future with 1 billion developers. A future where more people can use code to solve their problems and bring their ideas to life with others. Over the past 50 years, software has become increasingly accessible, both the access to it and the ability to write it. And naturally, this is raising some questions. What does the future look like where 10% of the world can build in their natural language? What will this event look like in just 10 years? Another question I hear when I'm walking the halls around Universe is, what does it mean to be a developer in this era? With AI breaking down barriers to entry, the path to becoming a developer isn't confined to a single story or background. It's about creativity, problem solving, and passion, things that come from the heart. So take my developer journey, for example. I started coding when my mom brought home a home computer from United Technologies. I'm not even sure I was supposed to use it, but if I got ready early in the morning, she let me work on it and build some code in BASIC. Fast forward to high school, and suddenly I was thrown into an entirely different world. A teacher sent me to my town's voter registration office, where they asked me to create a tool to help people check their voter registration status. And what did they want me to use? The world's most powerful database, Microsoft Access. The next year, I turned that into a web app with PHP, but even then, I still didn't think software was a career path for me. So when it came time to go to college, I chased my passion for lighting design, all while using Rails 1.0 to build web apps and for realtors and small businesses to make some money on the side. But I can assure you there are only so many little web apps that one kid can make. And so when I couldn't make enough to continue to pay for college, I dropped out. And eventually, I joined my first startup. And that's when the world opened up to me. It didn't matter my background, my education, or my age. What mattered was the problems I could solve and what I could do with code. And I was hooked. And eventually found my way here to GitHub. And I've had the privilege of working with incredibly talented hubbers, building webhooks, our news feed, the API, GitHub Marketplace, our first version of GitHub Actions, and so much more. Now, Ira Glass famously says, the best sign of growth is looking back at your work and realizing it was terrible. And I'm proud to say, much of the code I wrote back then is no longer in the GitHub code base. My point here is we all have some story about how we got here, how we arrived in software, and how we became software developers. Sometimes these paths are traditional, but oftentimes they're not. Take Hubbers, for example. We have an entire Slack channel dedicated to employees with unconventional journeys to software. We've got Hubbers who started in art school and found their way to CSS. Maybe they can finally teach me how to center a div. We've got folks who decided college wasn't their thing, but gained life experiences around the world. And some who just thought a career in technology wasn't in the cards for them. Whether we studied computer science in college or stumbled into code, our paths to software are often as nuanced as life itself, full of plot twists and rewrites, and sometimes failed ships. But once you're here, once you're a part of the home for all developers, once you've found your tribe, you're one of us. You have a place here regardless of your background. Since AI tools like GitHub Copilot went mainstream in early 2023, the number of developers on GitHub has grown rapidly. Millions of new developers are building, creating, and solving problems with code. AI isn't diluting what it means to be a developer. In fact, it's turning it up a notch, making way for new creativity and bringing the love of coding to more people than we ever thought possible. So I shared my story of becoming a developer, but I want all of you to think back to your origin story. The moment you knew you were a developer and found your passion for code. Now, as a community, it's time to bring that spark to the rest of the world. And as developers, we get to hold the doors open for this next generation. 1 billion people building with code, turning ideas into reality. A future where the same passion, joy, frustration, and creativity that we've all come to know and love as developers can be unleashed for all humanity. But something this bold is going to take all of us. Developers have proven over and over again that they are up for the task. From open source contributors to enterprise devs to beginners writing their first line of code. One commit, one pull request, one breakthrough at a time. So GitHub has always been the home for all developers. From the very beginning, our goal has been to enable you to collaborate, innovate, and build the future together. And each year, we take a pulse of our community and we share it with the world via our Octoverse report. It covers everything from the most popular programming languages to the fastest growing dev populations around the globe. Now, yesterday, you heard Thomas break the news. Python is the #1 language on GitHub. I heard gasps in the room yesterday, but don't worry, everyone. JavaScript is alive and well. Someone even showed me the new framework that they built here at Universe, so don't worry, we're good, y'all. But beyond programming languages, Octoverse is also where we uncover the latest trends emerging from within our community. And we get to see the projects that have clearly struck a chord with developers. So I want to begin today where so many of us have, with a side project. You know, that project that you start thinking it'll just be a quick thing just for you, but it turns into something so much more. Managing a project with thousands of contributors in a single year is no easy feat. And even then, it's not just about the code. Building and maintaining these large communities takes a village. It requires dedicated maintainers, contributors, and a shared vision to bring it all to life. So who here uses Home Assistant? Yeah, me too. So for the folks that don't know, Home Assistant is an open source home automation platform that lets you control everyday devices like lights, cameras, and thermostats, regardless of their platform or interoperability. I've been a huge fan of this project ever since Jesse Newlin, a former Hubber, showed it to me so many years ago. Now, I haven't quite outgrown it running on a Raspberry Pi 4, but it probably just means I need to automate some more things in my house. Hacking on my own version of Home Assistant is how I keep coding in my daily life. That's why when we launched GitHub Sponsors, Paulus, the founder, was the first maintainer I funded. That's how much I believed in their work. And I'm not alone in that. With over 83,000 GitHub stars across their top 5 repositories, and over 5,000 users having a PR merged, Home Assistant is a prime example of how a passionate community can turn their ideas into reality. Now, while I could talk about Home Assistant all day, I'd rather show you what it can do. And who better to do that than the folks behind the magic? So let me introduce Paulus, founder of Home Assistant, and Frank, engineering lead for Home Assistant. Good to see you both.
Hey, Kyle.
So excited to have you here with us at Universe. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how Home Assistant got started?
Sure. Thanks, Kyle. So back in 2013, I got some smart lights, and they had a local API. So I did what developers do. I wrote a little bit of Python, and I was able to control them locally. And I felt like I had a superpower, but I wanted to use this. So I automated my lights to turn on automatically when the sun was setting. But next up, I realized they're turning on when I'm not at home. I have to add some presence detection. And that's how I iterated and iterated and iterated, and eventually, Home Assistant was born. Now, I initially put the code on GitHub, not because I wanted to create a smart home platform or any platform at all. It was because I would look good doing job interviews. I never expected it to grow the way it did.
And it turns out a lot of people wanted to control their homes. They were looking for ways to connect all their smart devices together and automate with them in clever ways. And soon, thousands of people were tinkering in their homes and bringing new user interfaces and new features to the masses. And this growth in users and contributions was truly unbelievable. It was actually quite overwhelming, to be honest. But it is a testament to the strength of our community. They are inspiration, our guidance, and they steer us in the right direction as we continue to grow and scale here on GitHub. But most importantly, they believe in our vision for an open home.
So, Frank, that's actually a perfect segue into this home setup that we have on stage. I'm a big fan of showing things off, and so I figured we could start by showing you a little bit about how Home Assistant works. Let's start with the hello world of Home Assistant by simply turning this light on and off.
Oh, wow.
Woo! You don't have to lie, it's not that interesting. Instead, though, I can actually control this through an API with Home Assistant. So Martin from our DevRel team soldered a Wi-Fi board onto one of our hackable badges here. So if this works, I can control it by clicking this button here on the badge.
Ah.
See? Yeah. Little cooler.
I love that. It's that kind of tinkering that is actually very natural to us. And Home Assistant empowers you to integrate all kinds of devices and services together across all kinds of ecosystems. And you can automate your home locally by installing the Home Assistant operating system on all sorts of low-powered hardware, like, for example, a Raspberry Pi. Or if you're more into a plug-and-play experience, you can get one of the hardwares we produce, like this one Kyle's holding up, the Home Assistant Green.
Yeah, I mean, these devices are beautiful, much nicer than my ragtag Raspberry Pi setup at home. But
really nice.
One of the things that I use Home Assistant as an avid user every year is to automate my decorations around my house. It's spooky season, so I hope you don't mind. I decided to bring a few of my decorations behind me. They are slowly making their way up, but I could show you while those heat up, or I could show you how I automate them at home. There we go, so it's looking great. If I click here on this graph, I can see when they've been on. So that way I've been at Universe now in California for 3 weeks. I live on the East Coast. I want to make sure that my decorations are not being left on every night and annoying my neighbors. And so I can see that here. And if I come back out, I can look at the triggers and actions. And if I click these 3 dots, I can go in and edit the YAML for my automation. And you can decide whether YAML is a trick or treat. You can decide. If I back all the way out here to the dashboard, you can also see that we've customized this dashboard to have the local temperature and weather. I'll turn the room up a little bit. It's cold today.
Right, for sure, right? It's so nice to have all your details personal to you when you're starting your day, even down to those easy access buttons to control those Halloween decorations.
And so up until this point, everything that we've shown has been pretty straightforward. But I want to click this Home Assistant Core tab. So as you can see here, we can look at the Home Assistant Core dashboard and see the latest stats from this repository. Now, this is a custom integration that Jessica from our team built. It uses a bit of JavaScript and CSS, and it pulls from GitHub's GraphQL API. The extensibility options here are awesome, so we're also going to be upstreaming this integration. So if you use Home Assistant, you can use this too.
Yes.
The cool thing about this, it is fully customizable, and we try not to lock away any functionality. So there are actually a lot of people, like Jessica, building things and then sharing them on GitHub for anyone really to use with a couple of clicks. Everyone, no matter their skill level, can make it their own. So whether that is changing an appearance or adding new devices not yet supported.
Right, and community contributions, they're actually central to how we work. It brings the power back to the developers so they can bring the things they want to see to the project and then share them with everybody else.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, by the way, if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed that the Octa lamp over there has been turning yellow on and on behind us. That's actually been when folks have been starring the Home Assistant Core repository. So I'm nerd sniping all of you. You know what to do. Go star the repo until inevitably the LED bulb burns out. Now, showing all these features is awesome, but let's get back to the magic, the community. I mentioned earlier that building and maintaining a community like Home Assistant takes a village. Did you want to talk a little bit more about how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, so let me share something. 6 years ago, on Home Assistant's 5th anniversary, we announced Nabukasa. It's a company to help focus the development of the project. The community is still in the driving seat, but Nabukasa makes sure that it stays on track. And Nabukasa, it isn't funded by investors, but it's funded by the community through our Home Assistant cloud subscription and Home Assistant hardware. These optional extras, they make it easier to use while funding the development. It's a win-win. But we took this year another big step. We created the Open Home Foundation. It's a non-profit based in Switzerland to which I donated Home Assistant. The foundation, it cannot be bought, it cannot be sold, and this means Home Assistant will always be free and open source.
So as we think about the future and how developers ready to build their own communities, we have found that by designing something that gives people full control and empowers them to build, we have grown one of the biggest and most awesome open communities here on GitHub. And being intentional about your community's wants and needs and giving them the platform to build is key.
Yeah, and in this year's Octoverse report, we found that Home Assistant had over 20,000 contributors this year. That's huge, but I know there's always more work to be done.
Yeah. Exactly. We would love for all of you to join our community of smart home builders, but maybe you have another passion. So I would like to leave with this question. What are you all going to build on GitHub? Thank you all, and have a great GitHub Universe.
Thank you. Thanks to Frank and Paulus. I really encourage you all to check out Home Assistant. It's just one example of what happens when we use our talents to solve real problems and then share them with the world. This year, Home Assistant brought in the second highest number of first-time contributors on GitHub. That's over 2,000 new people jumping in thanks to Paulus, Frank, and their community. It's awesome. In software, we're all building on top of each other. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and sometimes we're creating new giants entirely by just relying on them in our projects. When GitHub started, we focused on building tools around Git to make code collaboration easier. Now, 16 years later, it's our responsibility to make software development easier for all of you, so you can go out and build more giants in the world, just like Paulus and Frank did with Home Assistant. That's why we continue to bring free features to everyday developers, like discussions, issue tracking, actions, and so much more. We want you to build that idea, bring your vision to life, and share it with developers all around the world. So let's start by talking about GitHub Actions. Actions has continued to grow and evolve since we launched it in 2018. Just this year, developers have used over 10 billion with a B, minutes in Actions to automate routine tasks, check code quality, and ship faster. You can use Actions for free in public repositories for your builds. And given we talked about IoT and Home Assistant earlier, we want to make it even easier for those of you working on embedded software. So starting next year, we're bringing ARM-hosted runners for free to public repositories. We want you to continue to test and build and run those projects without the overhead of managing your own hardware. Now, while we're talking about Actions, I always prefer showing you how we're using our own features on GitHub. Your experience should be similar to our everyday flows. So let's take a peek at how we automate things with GitHub Actions. Now, we're obviously heavy users of Actions internally. And in the early days, for those of us that have been around for a while, you heard a lot about chat ops and Hubot from us and how we do so much via these powerful chat commands. But we haven't talked much about other things that we've done in the last few years, like issue ops. So let me explain how that works. GitHub Actions can trigger from many different GitHub events. It's not just pushes and pull requests, but also from issues. So take, for example, just outside GitHub Central in this Keynote area, many of those demos are spun up by the staff using GitHub Issues and GitHub Actions. So if I click on one of these templates here, we get taken to a form to fill out. And this triggers a clever automation behind the scenes powered by GitHub Actions to track the state of what's deployed and to tear it down when the issue is closed. So this is just one example. A lot of our teams use issues and actions to automate their work intake, and some even assign triage scores. But GitHub Issues is also evolving. So let's go over to the issue team's roadmap to see how they're using their own product. They don't know I'm doing this, so hi, issues team. Good to see you. To recap, GitHub Projects lets you display GitHub issues in different ways. So in this overview, we're looking at it like a spreadsheet. This helps stakeholders like myself understand and get a glance of the overall status and direction. But I can also look at this in a timeline view, like a Gantt chart. This helps the team understand key ships, dependencies to deploy. And of course, we can go to the swim lanes tab where we're using a board view showing issues by status. This allows the teams to understand where there's bottlenecks in their shipping process. And there's an interesting issue here. Let this load up. It looks like they're looking into closing issues as duplicates and chatting with many of you. I know this is a very common request, so we can take a quick sneak peek. If I scroll down, I can see that, yes, they're going to add a new pillbox label if an issue is closed as a duplicate. So that's great. If I come back out here, I can now also look at these views and adjust them by using this filter. So in this case, we're not showing issues that are in draft or ones that are already done. And of course, I can come over and I can configure each of these views, including the fields to show, columns, slicers, and more. The team has been putting a lot of love into GitHub Issues and projects. And in fact, they recently launched several features in public preview that I use every single day. So sub-issues is a great example of that. When we're managing a project, we obviously often need to track smaller tasks in the hierarchy. And so we can see here we have this new visual where we can see the progress of each item's nested issues. And we can get meta here and take a peek at the issue for sub-issues. And if I scroll a bit down, yep, it's sub-issues all the way down. If I expand one of these, I can take a look at that hierarchy and can continue to expand the hierarchy and see the issues that the team is nesting. I love this because it gives a great overview of the team's work at various different levels. So that's just a small taste of GitHub in action, the way that we use it here at GitHub. And we're going to keep bringing features like these to every single developer. Now, security is another place where we've made some big investments this year in bringing more functionality to open source and public repositories. I'm sure if we all took out our phones and opened up the GitHub app, we'd see that glaring number of vulnerability alerts staring back at us. Not me, I work here, but hey, we're all guilty of it. Well, I know most of you are. Now, tune into Mike's session later today, but this is exactly why we're bringing more of the power of our security tools to public repositories, starting with Copilot Autofix. Copilot Autofix is taking the pain away. We're not just finding vulnerabilities and telling you how to fix them. We're doing all of that and then basically fixing them for you. We know open source maintainers are the ones who often bear the brunt of these fixes, and we want to make it that much easier for you. So Copilot Autofix is available for free for all public repositories. But today, we're taking security a step even further. We want to ensure that there's never a trade-off between fixing a vulnerability and continuing to innovate on your project. That's why I'm so excited to share the new Secure Open Source Fund. Through this fund, projects will get access to partnerships with GitHub security experts, security education, incident response support, and direct funding through GitHub sponsors starting next month. We already have some amazing partners and over $1 million in funding ready to go, and it is growing every single day. Now, this is an exciting new step, but it is not our first time supporting open source. Since sponsors launched in 2019, you've contributed nearly $60 million back to open source projects and maintainers. And get this, nearly 6,000 companies have jumped in too. That's a 38% leap just in the last year. It's organizations like American Express, Shopify, Evan Yu's new company, Void Zero, and of course GitHub, supporting the maintainers in projects of some of the world's most pivotal work, like curl, the VLLM project, and Open Web UI. And with the GitHub Fund, we're also investing in early-stage developer tools startups. Mermaid Chart simplifies the creation of engineering diagrams. Moondream builds vision language models for AI applications. And Unsloth makes fine-tuning LLMs faster, easier, and more efficient. So whether you're a maintainer or a startup, we're trying every way possible to connect open source developers to the resources that they need to bring their projects to the world. And amidst all this is the largest software development change in the last 10 years, GitHub Copilot, the best way to build with an AI pair programmer. Today, over 1 million students, teachers, and open source maintainers have used Copilot for free. If you need help reviewing a GitHub issue, just ask Copilot. Offering feedback on a pull request from a community contribution, you can ask Copilot for that too. It feels like we're only scratching the surface of what's possible, and we're constantly finding new ways to bring even more functionality directly into your GitHub workflows. And I've shared all these things, these features and offerings, and obviously there's so much more that I couldn't share in the keynote today, because GitHub has always been committed to empowering all developers. For us, it's about that day-to-day experience of being a dev. Coding should be a joyful one. Coding should be a joyful experience, and we want everyone to have the same tools that we use internally. So whether you started with Emacs or Vim, Sublime Text, TextMate, VS Code, Subversion, or Git, now that you're at GitHub, you deserve the best modern developer-friendly tools. And that's even more important for the next generation of developers that are finding their way on GitHub. Now, there's a lot of talk about this next wave of developers, what languages they'll use, where they are in the world, and of course, what innovations that they'll bring to life. But these developers aren't just students in classrooms. They're everyday people following their passions, just like you and me. They're 14 and 40. Some are studying right now to become devs, while others don't know a piece of code yet. We're preparing for all of these folks and finding the unique ways that they'll build on GitHub so they can join us in creating the future. So as we commonly do at GitHub, when we have a big, hairy problem about the future of software development, we turn to GitHub Next. They're the team behind innovations like GitHub Copilot, Copilot Workspace, our beautiful Mona Sans variable font, and now they're exploring what it means to make learning accessible to everyone. And so this is another one of my favorite moments at Universe, where I get to show you a vision of what the future could be. I want to be very clear, this is not a launch or a ship, at least not yet. This is just a few developers talking to a few developers, showing you our ideas so that we can grow them together. So in that spirit, let me introduce Amelia from GitHub Next to show you what the future of learning just might look like. Amelia.
Thanks, Kyle. Hey, I'm Amelia. I'm a principal research engineer on the Next team. So at Next, we're focused on the future of developer experience. And while a lot of AI tools are focused on generating more code, we're interested in empowering developers to better understand that code. And we have some ideas on how to incorporate that learning into our day-to-day process. So what if I told you that you could spin up a bespoke learning environment tailored to your personal goals and daily work? What kind of building process would that unleash? Normally, I save prototypes like this for a smaller setting, but we're celebrating 10 years of Universe, so let's go for it. I'm going to show a way we can create dynamic courses tailored to you. Let's run through an example. Let's say we're building a travel website with a 3D sky. Now, let's say I've never made a 3D website before, so I typically start off with some furious web searching, maybe look at some documentation and examples, and manually translate them piece by piece to my building environment. But what if I had something to do that process for me? Let me introduce to you Learning Sandbox. So instead of reading through examples and documentation, I'm going to create a sandbox to help me make my 3D sky. So I'm familiar with JavaScript, but let's say I've always wanted to learn 3JS. I can specify packages and my experience level so the course focuses on concepts that are new to me. And off we go. The course is split into bite-sized pieces for me to learn one at a time. The content is directly linked to the code with references that I can click to focus on the relevant parts. And I can always dig deeper with links to relevant articles or documentation. We have a full-fledged sandbox environment on the right for us to test out what we've learned. And we're also prompted with exercises to try out. Or if we're in a rush, we can skip directly to the answer by clicking the Show Me How button. Just like that, we have a sunrise. So once we reach the end of a section, we have suggestions for what to learn next. Let's go ahead and choose the next one up and learn about adding a 3D dome for the sky. But we don't have to continue on as suggested. We at Next believe that learning is best directed by natural curiosity or by your own goals. So we can choose another option or even generate a completely different direction. For now, let's choose the next one up and learn how to add a cloud to our sky. So as we learn, we'll have questions that aren't answered by the content. At any point, we can ask for guidance using the dialog box, like asking how to change the sky colors. And Learning Sandbox will explain how to make those changes, along with code samples that we can copy directly into the sandbox. And we can iterate indefinitely, adding a sun or animating the cloud to move left and right. And while we go, we're learning new concepts to use now and in the future. So imagine the possibility with such a tool and what it could mean for both current and future developers. Hands-on learning for any concepts you need to know. Being able to find your way around any code base with a custom code tour, or learning while making as you complete tasks in your daily work. So there's no one book, video, or course that works for everyone. Aiming to help 1 billion developers means creating content for billions of environments, billions of use cases, and billions of individual skill sets. And to do that well, we at GitHub Next want to build an educational environment that tailors to every specific scenario. Now today, this is only a prototype, but hey, we said that for GitHub Copilot. We're incredibly excited to explore it further as we continue investigating the future of software, so stay tuned for more. Now let's hand it back to Kyle.
Thanks, Amelia. Learning Sandbox gives you a glimpse into how we think learning will evolve in the next few years. But in the meantime, we're also focused on the millions of people learning on GitHub today. Through GitHub Education, we partner with schools and universities around the world to ensure that students have access to GitHub, specialized tools for the classroom, and resources to help educators teach real-world software development. And with our campus experts, and I know there's some in the audience, all right, simmer down, y'all. We have students who work together to build strong technical communities on their campuses. We're continuing to see more students and teachers leverage GitHub and Copilot. And to date, GitHub has over 7 million verified students around the world. That's up 1.5 million just in the last year. So to start to wrap us up today, I want to zoom in on one of our nonprofit partners that I really love, Hack Club. They're a global nonprofit powered by over 40,000 teen hackers around the world. They run a teen-led organization where students can find each other, write software, build custom hardware, and nerd out in an online community and in real life too. But beyond all that, these teens are steeped in the joy of hacking in a way that just feels so nostalgic to me. So this summer, we sponsored Hack Club Arcade, a free program for students to earn tickets by building projects. In just 2.5 months, 19,000 students signed up and logged over 135,000 hours of coding. Then they redeemed their tickets for prizes. I mean, they really know how to theme an event. I'm super jealous. And the most popular prizes were Raspberry Pis, and shockingly, at least to me, YubiKeys. So yes, YubiKeys are still badass news in 2024. Mike's very happy in the front row. Earlier this month, the GitHub Education team and I spent a few days with some of these students up in their headquarters in Vermont. Now, on the ride up, I had a sense of what to expect, but to be honest, I was completely blown away. This video shows our next generation of developers at work, already tackling new challenges head-on with code and hardware. That's Charlie, 14-year-old, who built a weather balloon that can float between 5,000 to, I'm told now, 100,000 feet in the air, drop an autonomous glider that can go to a particular set of coordinates, starting with a foam glider that my kids just throw in the backyard right now. And that's Manitej. He's a 17-year-old who converted a Pomodoro timer that he built for himself into a timer for all of the teens hacking on projects. And there's also folks like Zahir, who isn't in the video, but wrote a modern operating system entirely from scratch just over the summer. They're not building these projects solo, like so many of us did growing up. They're building and sharing and iterating together. If they're stuck on a project, they ask and they use this digital scrapbook to show it all off. I mean, which one of us hasn't written a commit message late at night at some point in our career that looks a little bit something like some of these? And so we've decided to do more with Hack Club and invite all of you here, even if you're not a teen, to help us out. But there was one person who impressed me so much that I wanted them to join me on stage for the next announcement. So, people of Universe, please join me in welcoming one of Hack Club's students, Akon.
Thanks, Kyle, and hello, Universe. I'm Akon, and I'm a student at Hack Club. I designed web stuff as a front-end dev and launched programs around the world to get students excited about coding. Earlier this year, I ran Apocalypse. That's where the hoodie I'm wearing is from. It's a high school hackathon where you build tech to survive the zombie apocalypse. We shipped 40 projects from 150 teams in Toronto in just one weekend. But we didn't stop there. This November, Hack Club is organizing Counterspell, a beginner-friendly game jam happening in 200 cities around the world at the same time. But that's just the beginning. We've been working with GitHub for a while now on programs like Hack Club Arcade. Now today, I'm excited to announce our biggest program yet, Hack Club High Seas. In partnership with GitHub, we're inviting over 40,000 students around the world to build and share their projects on GitHub. We're giving students free hardware when they ship their creations. But I'd say the coolest part of this announcement is that we're launching it right here, right now, live on stage. Okay, so before I came on stage, I merged a pull request. Let me check to see if that workflow is done. And here's all the commits. And yup, it looks just about right. And now let's check out the site. All right. Hack Club High Seas is now officially live and open for registrations and donations. But I'll let Kyle talk about that later. Thanks. See you around.
Thank you so much, Akon, for joining us. We invited her about 2 weeks ago after I met them, and she's been such a champ, the whole team has. If you're watching this and you're in high school, you can sign up for the High Seas using the QR code behind me. And if you're sadly too old to join in, like me, we've partnered with Hack Club to use the same code, and you can help sponsor some of those redeemable prizes, like Raspberry Pis, iPads, framework laptops, and more. And if you really want to take it a step further, I'd love to invite you all to GitHub's 12th annual Game Off, our month-long hackathon, November 1st. So regardless of your age or experience, you can build a game from scratch, collaborate and learn with the community, and share it with the world, or just me personally, because I'd love to play your game. Now, for all of you here in person, I also have a special ask for you. The hackable badges that you're wearing, if you're not going to bring them home and take out your soldering iron, I happen to know a group of 40,000 teenagers who would love to get their hands on them and their Raspberry Pi 2350s, which they eagerly told me are not released to the public yet. So, with our commitment to sustainability at GitHub, you can drop them in the marked boxes on the way out, and we'll wipe your data, get them ready for the Hack Club team, so they can turn them into probably an autonomous drone to teach me Gen Z slang or something like that. Over the last 10 GitHub Universes, we've seen the community of developers and students and creators on GitHub continue to grow year over year and accomplish things we never would have imagined when a simple Git host was created in 2008. You've shown the world what's possible, not just through code, but through creativity, a love for problem solving, and all the experiences that make you, you. And that's what gets over 3,000 Hubbers out of bed every single day, enabling you to do your best work on GitHub, whether it's solving the toughest challenges, starting a new project, or taking your first steps with a Hello World tutorial. We're here with you. And we're just starting on the journey of having even more new developers with us. Over 1 billion problem solvers, 1 billion developers, helping tackle challenges for themselves and humanity on the biggest social coding platform in the world. So whether you're Akon, Paulus, Frank, Amelia, or myself, we all have our developer story. How we got started with software, the test failure that kept us up all night, or when we truncated the production database again. But today, the story for someone, somewhere on GitHub, has just begun. Thank you so much.
I didn't know anything about computers at all, so jumping in on the deep end was challenging, but in a great way.
I got to learn how to use a computer from kids in the neighborhood trying to play Wolfenstein 3D. Like, that was my on-ramp.
My older brother, he's the one who taught me what different computer parts are, how to take apart a desktop. I built my first PC with him.
I just couldn't pull myself away from these machines.
I wanted to be a developer. I wanted to write code.
I could build something which can be used by an end user, and that actually really tempted me.
Suddenly, I started creating my own video games, small programs.
Either I'm gonna fail at this totally, or I just have to share my wacky ideas.
We built this game called Football Heroes.
I started contributing to Angular.
I started off doing 100 days of code, sharing my journey, sharing what I was doing with Python.
That changed my entire life.
It sparked something in me.
I couldn't believe that a real person actually downloaded this thing that I contributed to.
Becoming a programmer, it opened the world for me.
It showed me the power of how small things can compound into big things, and then the world is watching.
Black women reach out to me now who are Java developers who say, I want to do that one day.
I just didn't realize that there was a whole nother world of people doing really cool stuff.
We write code for machines, but the truth is that we work with people.
I'm having so much fun with it every single day.
On GitHub, I found a place where what mattered was your contribution, not who you were. And that was a really legitimizing force.